Hey guys, this is Kayla with Becky's Graphic Design in Nashville, Tennessee, and today we're back for part 2 of our book design presentation. Last time we went over how to take a long Word manuscript and take each chapter individually into InDesign files and combine them all together into a book using the InDesign book function. We learned a couple of automations to help increase your efficiency while working on those long documents. Today, part 2, we are working on how to take that same document and make it into a nice, pretty ebook. I have come in and modified my files a little bit by adding some images and a couple of new styles. I added an H2 in here. Yeah, there it is, H2. But before we get started here, I am also going to highlight a couple of additional programs we will be using during the presentation, third-party things that will be doing outside of InDesign. Firstly, we will be utilizing Kindle Previewer 3. This is an Amazon software. It's free from Amazon, and this is what I will be viewing my EPUB files in. It's one of the more accurate ebook previewers. There are other ones out there as well, but this one is fairly accurate to how it looks on most devices. We will also be using a program called Sigil. This is an EPUB code editor, another free software. I particularly like this one for pulling apart ebook code. It's made specifically for that. You can open up ebook code in any other code editor, but Sigil is specifically made for the format of an ebook. The last one we'll be utilizing is called Pagina. This is an Epub-Checker. This is another free software in which you can run a validation on your EPUB file to make sure it is going to pass all of the specifications and requirements it must have to get through Ingram Spark or Amazon when going to publish the ebook. That way you can know if you're going to fail before you get to the upload process. All right, so getting back to InDesign. Before we get started, let's take note that I am in the Essentials Classic workspace. If you're following along, it'll be easier for you if you are also in this workspace. All right, so just a general overview of my file. Everything's the same as it was from last time, mostly with the addition of some images. So let's talk images first. Images are one of the more tricky parts of an ebook. They always turn out looking funny. Just to get an idea of what I'm talking about, let's go ahead and export out this book as an ebook just to see what we get. I am going to shift-click and highlight all my files in my InDesign book over here. And I'm going to go down to Export Book to EPUB. I'm going to click that, and we're going to save that in the correct location. I'm going to change my format from a fixed layout EPUB to a reflowable one. A reflowable EPUB is one that allows the user to increase the font size, change the colors, zoom in, click on links, and all sorts of other things. Okay, then I click reflowable and go ahead and hit save. Now there are tons of EPUB export options in here, just like there are in PDF export options. I'm not going to change anything here yet. We will be touching on this later on, but for now we're just going to hit OK and see what we get. Now I have my machine set to automatically open up these ebook files in Kindle Previewer 3 each time I export one out. Here we are getting an export warning for the table of contents. Yep, that's a common error. All right, so here's what we got. You can see that the title page has reduced itself into this tiny little area. The table of contents still has numbers on it. Oh yes, and here's our images. Remember my little fire icon? This is supposed to be at the beginning of each chapter, and it looks like it has flown away to the end. Yeah, chapter 2, the fire emblem is supposed to be above it. Okay. The text looks pretty good. It's doing what it's supposed to. But let's work on making these images look better. Let's go with this image of the Nashville skyline for now. I'm going to navigate back to InDesign now. And let's go down and find that Nashville skyline image. So this image, it looks like it is a group. This image is a group along with its corresponding caption. It is not anchored into the text, and there is a text wrap applied to this image to make sure that the body copy does not run on top of it or around it. As you could have seen back in Kindle Previewer, this doesn't really turn out so good. The image tends to fly away either to the beginning or the end of the chapter, and it does not necessarily stay in the place where it's supposed to. A couple of things to note when we start. When InDesign converts all of this into HTML code, it tends to read the widest item first. So what I mean by this is, say, let's pretend I ungroup these items. Oh yeah. We're going to drop that out of the way for now. Let's say that my caption, if I extend the width of my caption to this wide, InDesign is now going to read this item first. It's going to come across this before it gets over here. So when you're grouping a caption along with its image, make sure that the caption box is smaller in width than the image itself. Another thing to note is that when grouping your image with the caption, InDesign tends to read the first item in your group. What I mean by that is I'm going to first click the photograph and then the caption and then right click to group them. If I flip-flopped it and did the caption and then the image, sometimes that will also cause a flip-flop. The next thing we need to focus on is anchoring this group into the text. We're going to anchor it as close as we can get to where it actually is located in the text. I'm going to go ahead and anchor it over here to this paragraph. Images, groups, captions, anything that's an anchored object. It tends to take on the style that you anchor it to. So because I anchored this image and caption to this text, which is justified text, we are going to see this caption also take on an element of that text. It will not be perfectly centered in the page. It will be a bit cockeyed off to the left. The other thing we're probably going to see is that we may still get a caption photo flip-flop, and I'll talk more about this later on. But let's go ahead and export again and see what we get. We are going to save this file and then export again to an EPUB. Make sure it's reflowable, save, yes. Okay, again, I'm not yet touching on the export settings. Okay, let's scroll down and find our Nashville photo. There it is. Okay, good. The caption has decided to stay underneath the photo. But this photo is so tiny. How do I make it look bigger and nicer where we can actually see it? We can double click on it here and zoom in, but it's pretty low resolution. This is where our export settings come into play. So let's go back yet again to InDesign and just export another version with different settings. The first thing we're going to do is to change the EPUB version from a 2 to a 3.0. Next, we are going to go to the Object tab, and we are going to tell the EPUB to preserve the appearance from the current layout. And we also want to make the CSS, the styles. We are going to make the styles relative to the text flow, meaning that the size will attempt to maintain proportions from the visual representation of the code here. Align center, yep, that's good. Space before and after, that can stay 5. 150, that's good, yep. Yep. Okay, we'll talk about more of this later. But now that we have changed just those few settings, we should see much nicer, bigger images in our ebook. All right, let's go find our Nashville image again. Yes, that's much better. Because this image is fairly large and wide, it is dropping the caption to the next page. Here it is on this next page. And yep, we can see that the caption has sort of taken on the style of this body text, and it is not necessarily perfectly centered anymore. Something else to note is that sometimes your image, if it's particularly tall, it will be read as 2 different lines, which will then cause the caption to also flip-flop with it. So this is a method that does work, but it's not necessarily the most reliable way to place an image into your ebook. I have found a preferable way that is much more consistent and allows the main body text to flow much better around and with the images. So let's go back now and talk about this secondary method. Let's find another image to work with. Yeah, we'll use this lizard on the beach. So this image is a group. It's another group caption, and I believe a text wrap, yep, has been applied to it. So all I'm going to do is pull this out of the way, off to the side. That's one other thing to note too, is with these ebooks, say I was going to anchor this into the text, it does not matter at all if this image is pulled off to the side of the page, in the middle of the page, it will be pulled into the code. So oftentimes in my ebooks, I have all these images floating off to the sides like this. I'm going to release that anchor now. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a paragraph style to which we are going to attach our images. Remember what I said earlier about the image or the anchored object taking on the style that it's attached to? Why don't we go ahead and just make a style that is actually meant to receive those images. Now we're not using object styles. Object styles are good and helpful, but they can be a bit difficult to work with when you have images of varying heights. I've found that with reflowable documents, using just a paragraph style seems to work fine. So let's make a new paragraph style. And we're just going to call this inline image based on nothing. And the only thing we need to change here, really, none of this matters, other than the center alignment. That's the important thing. And the space before and after can be important too. For now, I'm just going to leave these at 1/8 of an inch. Any of the rest of this stuff doesn't really matter. Oh, rule above? No, we don't need that either. Check my keep options. Okay, maybe this wasn't the best style to copy over. There's some things in here that don't work to the best. All right, let's click OK. Now we have this image paragraph style. Let's add a new line and apply that style to the line. Now what I'm going to do is place my image in the flow of the text. So we're going to go up to File, Place, and then we're going to navigate to the place where my images are contained. I believe they are here. There's the bearded dragon picture. I'm not going to use any import options. I'm just going to leave everything as it is. So everything disappeared. What's that mean? Before I click anything, don't freak out. What happened is this image is too large. It came in gigantic, and it has forced all the text to flow on into infinity. So before I click anything, I'm going to go up here to my width and height adjusters and bring the size of that image down to 50%. There we go. Now it's back into reality. Now I can use my regular sliders to size it down. I'm going to make it the size of the margins. And the other thing we're going to do is adjust the anchored object options for this image. What I mean by this is that we don't want the text to be able to flow on top of or around the image like this. So we're going to make some edits to the options here. Now currently we have the option of inline selected, and then we have an offset in the Y height. Sometimes though, it will pull in elements from this area even if it is not the selected option. So I'm going to make things the way I like over here before changing it back to inline. Now everything has a nice default 0. Instead of manually adjusting this image, now we can go to our paragraph style, and let's say we wanted to add some more space before the image. Now we can do it like this, because this image is pulling the style of that paragraph style. Now let's add a caption. Actually, we already have a caption style. So let's go to our caption style, select that, and let's say lizard on the beach. And let's make sure that this paragraph style has a keep option to keep it from disconnecting from the image. I'm going to double click on the caption, go to my keep options, and I want it to keep with the previous line, and I do want all lines of the paragraph to stay together. That's good. I'm also going to check while I'm at it the space before. Yeah, we don't need that much space before. That looks pretty good right there. Now, if we readjust, now this image and caption stay together and it flows along with the rest of the book. I can make this image bigger now. I can make it teeny tiny, and it will readjust along with the rest of the text. And this will all carry on over into the ebook. Let's make this a more comfortable size. That looks good right there. Okay. And let's go ahead and export it out and see what we get. I'm going to save the file, save the book just to be safe, and then export to EPUB. If you're having issues with your image and the text not playing well together, the body text, go ahead and apply a text wrap to the image. That should help. This image does not have a text wrap on it, but if my body text was not playing well with it, I could apply this jump over text wrap and then everything would work perfectly. All right. Back in Kindle Previewer 3, let's look at our ebook. And let's scroll down and find the lizard picture. There it is. Yep. Now this image is allowed to live on the same page as the rest of the body text. And depending on if we resize this, the text will just kind of flow around and the image will stay where it's supposed to be. But the text is still allowed to play around the image, even when we change the size. All right. One other image thing to talk about. I'm going to go back to InDesign now. Let's talk about our little icons at the beginning. This fire icon is an EPS file, a vector file. Sometimes ebooks and vectors do not play well, but I think it'll work out in this instance. It should just get converted into a PNG. Now I'm going to anchor this image to the beginning of my chapter 2 style, and it should technically stay right here with this text. However, if you're having issues with your icons flying away, I often recommend placing them underneath, say attaching it to, instead of the beginning of the line, anchoring it to the end of the line. Then it will stay underneath this chapter 2 text and will not fly away. We also have some options for the anchored object. So currently it is set as a custom position. I'm going to take it back to that inline option. I want it to stay above the line, and I'm going to give it an alignment of center. Everything I just did is more concrete. Instead of having a custom positioning with lots of strange code, I basically simplified the code for it. Click OK. And then we're going to export again. But before I do that, let's talk about our anchored object options. So currently I have been manually applying those inline or above line styles by clicking my items, going to anchored object, and then options. We can set a default for those for every item if we go up to object, anchored object, and go to the option defaults or the insert defaults. Insert defaults are going to be when I place a new image in, and these are the defaults for things that are already in here. Currently, everything is set to 0. That's excellent. That's what I like. Let's go back again and look at the insert ones. And 0. That's good. That's what I like. All right. Now we are going to export to EPUB again after I save this file. Change it to reflowable, hit save, yes. And when we come back to this chapter 2, we should have a nice little fire icon above the text that has not flown away. All right, let's go find our little fire icon. Okay, that's right, I anchored it to the end of chapter 2, didn't I? Show text threads, yep. Okay, now that that's anchored to the beginning, that's where it will go next time we export. All right, that is images. There are some ways you can get images to text wrap around in an ebook. I just made a video about that on our YouTube channel, but it does require going in and manually editing the code. InDesign doesn't have a very good way to make a text wrap or a float in InDesign. It must be done after the fact. Okay, now that we're good here, let's talk about our table of contents. Our table of contents in an ebook is always messy. In an ebook, these page numbers do not matter at all because there's no such thing as page numbers in an ebook. If you change the font size even 1 point, all the page numbers will reflow completely. So these numbers don't mean anything to us. I'm actually going to completely delete this table of contents, and this is something I recommend doing when converting your print book into an ebook. There's just a lot of leftover things that make things messy. If you try to modify that current table of contents, it is always better to just generate a new one. So I'm going to go up to Edit, Table of Contents, and take note here, I have already made this table of contents and saved it as a style. I have already added in the paragraph styles I want to target, and I have applied a level to each of them. Looking at this now, I think I don't want journal prompts to be below H2s. I want them to be on the same level, so I'm going to up that level to level 2. So now there's chapter title and then H2s and journal prompts below it. We are going to get rid of the page numbers for each of these. We don't need them at all. Gonna select no page number, and no page number, and no page number. Important things to note at the bottom. Definitely include your book documents. Definitely make a text anchor in the source paragraph. That's the most important one. Removing a forced line break can be good. And PDF bookmarks is good too. All right. Now before you click OK and get excited and run off, make sure you save this style. This is important. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to rename this a new style from my print style. I want this to be specifically for the ebook. I'm going to click OK. Now hit OK and generate that table of contents. There we go. Now what we have done is created a style that the ebook can now see. When we export out our ebook, and we look back over here, look at this navigation on the side. This navigation lets you click through the ebook in various locations, go to chapter 2, chapter 3, blah, blah, blah. That's great and all, but what if I want to navigate to the journal prompts or to the About the Author page or something that's not considered a file name? Let's go back and talk about that. When we export this book, we are looking for not the file names, but that style that we just made. So let's look at our options. The navigation, this is what we're looking for. So currently the navigation TOC, meaning the device side navigation, is set to file name. We want it to be a multi-level generated from a table of contents style. And okay, here's this style, but where is the ebook one we just made? The reason we don't see it is because we have not synced our table of contents styles throughout the whole book. So let's hit cancel, and we're going to go to our synchronize options for the ebook. We are going to make sure all the chapters are highlighted, and we're going to change our source style from chapter 2 to the front matter, briefly, temporarily. Select everything, and we're going to go down to synchronize options. Now make sure the only thing you have selected here is table of content styles. You don't want to update your character or paragraph styles from the front matter because that's not the main body of the book. I've been using chapter 2 as my source style throughout this whole project, and it would be a mistake to change it now. So the only thing checked here, table of content styles. Synchronize. Now the rest of the documents have that style in it. They can see it. All right. Now I'm changing my source style back to chapter 2, saving the book. Now when we export to EPUB, we'll be able to see it in the export options. navigation, multi-level. There it is, ebook style. Now, when we export out this file, we're going to have a table of contents that is based on the content that we pulled from the book automatically. There we go. Okay. Now, we have these links that have been generated. We can click on these and go to the corresponding chapters. And when we look on the side, now we have chapters with drop-downs and journal prompts. This is much more precise than what is generated by the file names. All right, next we are going to talk about our title page. Currently, this is our title page. It's been condensed down to these 7 or so lines. We don't want this to be the first impression of our book. We want it to be pretty right off the bat. So we are going to make a picture of our title page to place in this area. Go back to InDesign. And what I'm going to do is basically make a picture of this title page. We are going to do this by creating a background for it. So currently I'm drawing out a rectangle and adding a white background to it. I'll make it yellow for now so you guys can see it. Sending it to the back. And I'm just going to make this the size of the page, maybe a little smaller. Something that's a little more device friendly. Now I'm going to make this the color of the paper, and I'm going to select everything on this page. I'm going to go up to File, Export, and then I'm going to save a JPEG of the front matter. I'm going to click Save. I'm going to export just the selection. You could also do this by just exporting out that range, that page number 1. But I kind of like having the control over the size of my selection. And we're going to leave everything as default and click Export. Now what InDesign has done is created a picture of all of this. Currently everything is highlighted in blue because it has some overrides or something on it. But we no longer need these at all. So we're just going to ditch everything on this page. Bye-bye. Now I'm going to add in a new text box. And I'm going to apply my inline image style to it, which I can't see because I haven't synchronized my styles. So we'll do that. I'm going to synchronize my paragraph and character styles from chapter 2 throughout the book. Now I can apply inline image here. We are going to place. There it is, our front matter JPEG. I'm going to open that, click to place it, and then I'm simply going to anchor in right there. And like I said before, these do not even have to be on the page. They can be floating off to the side. It does make no difference at all. All right. Next thing we're going to talk about is our copyright page. Currently, our copyright page is flowing exactly behind our title page, which we can see right here. I want to add a page break just before this so that the copyright information starts on its own page. So we are going to make what I call a page break style. All that means is I am going to make a new paragraph style. Doesn't really matter what the style is, but the only thing it must have for sure, we need this option to be checked, split document. This is only used in EPUBs, and to ensure that it works, there's a couple things we need to make sure we do. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm currently making this style in my front matter, which is not my source style. So what I'm going to do is copy this line, which contains the style of page break that I just made, and I'm going to paste it in chapter 2 somewhere just so it exists here. I'm going to click paste, and there we go. Now we can see it down here at the bottom, and then I'm just going to backspace it. Back to the front matter. So I added this little tiny page break style just before, and I added a couple of spaces to it just so you can see it highlighted. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put another page break in front of the dedication, and I'm going to put another page break in front of the table of contents. The next thing we're going to do is when we export the book, we have to change some settings. We need to choose this option that says split document, and we want it to be based on those paragraph style export tags. That's that style that we went in and changed in the paragraph styles. We checked that little box. Other than that, that should be good. Click OK and see what we get. Looking at this book, now we're starting off with the title page as the first page. Our copyright information is next, with a nice page break, and another page break for the table of contents. Perfect, we're starting to look better here. Next, we are going to talk about our metadata. When we export again, we are going to go to this metadata tab on the side. Oh, actually, we forgot to add our cover too. So I already have an image set up and ready to go for this book. It is simply a JPEG set at the correct dimensions for an ebook. I'm just going to link that in and let it be there. Now we're going to go over to our metadata tab. All right. So here's where things can get a bit tricky if you're not sure what you're doing. An identifier is your ISBN number. I have one set aside here that we're going to paste in. Blah, blah, blah. This is our ISBN. Yep. Next is our title and subtitle. So this book is called Finding the Path of Me. If it had a subtitle, I would add it with a colon and simply write it out on the same line, subtitle. The creator, for us, is the author of the book. We often like to add a copyright symbol. We add the year, the copyright symbol, which I don't have on my clipboard currently, and then the author's name. The date, here's where you can get messed up pretty quick too. The date is very important for validation and for passing your publisher's standards. So the date always starts off with the year. So I'm going to start off with 2022. Next comes the month in this format, and then the day. It is not required to have a day or a month, but you must have a year in here. And it must be in this format where you start with the year, then the month, then the day. And if these dates do not match your upload date, you may have some validation issues when you try to get your ebook through publishing. Next is the description. This is fairly self-explanatory. This is going to be similar or possibly a shortened version of what you have on the back of your book, the back cover. The publisher, for us, is the business or the LLC that our author has set up for their book business. So for us, this would be Becky's Graphic Design. The rights, these are what are found in the copyright page, in the rights section. And then subject is keywords that are related to your book. So for our book, we could put Bearded Dragon, Nashville, fire. These are things that are related to our current book. All right. Now we have a cover, our title page, copyright, dedication, table of contents. We are looking pretty good. We know how to come in here and edit our images. These ones are still floating around. Now we are going to go in and edit our navigation manually because these have been generated from our style. Let's say that our client decided she no longer wanted numbers, but wanted these to be written out in long format. We can't really edit them in InDesign, not easily without going through and changing them all throughout our whole book. But we can go into the back end and edit the code itself. So I'm going to completely close the previewer, and we're going to open up our book with the program called Sigil. Sigil will pretty much always give you this warning when you open up something that's been exported from InDesign. InDesign does not do the best job of making clean HTML files, and Sigil really wants to clean it up for you, so it does a good job. I'm going to let it do so. All right, now don't freak out. You don't have to know anything about code to use Sigil. Because it is made specifically for ebooks, it makes this nice little table of contents on the side where you can easily navigate through the code of the book. But mainly what we're looking at today is the table of contents. So all you need to look for is a little section, a little file called TOC.xhtml. That's the one you want. I'm going to double click on that. And this is the navigation for your book. What we're focusing on is the white text. This is the display text that shows up on the side of the Kindle or whatever device. Now, remember our client, she no longer wanted it to say chapter 1, but chapter 1. And not chapter 2, but chapter 2. And so on and so forth. We could go through and change and update that for the whole book. I'm going to click Save. And when we go open our book again with Kindle Previewer 3, I'm simply clicking on the EPUB file here now since I've saved it through Sigil. There's no exporting through Sigil. All you gotta do is save. Now when this opens up again, you'll see the navigation will be different on the side. There we go. Now it says Chapter 1, Chapter 2, like our client likes. All right, guys, we're getting close. The last thing we're going to do is run this ebook file through a validator to make sure that it will pass standards for Kindle or Ingram Spark or wherever you're uploading it to. I'm going to close out of this for the last time. And now we're going to open up Pagina. Here I have it on my desktop. And all I need to do is drag this file over on top of it. It will automatically run. It doesn't look like it's doing anything right now, but it will. Very good. We get a green pop-up box. There is this list of errors, but you'll have these every time. These are simply telling you that the font that was in the book could not be decrypted or brought along with the ebook, which is fine because the ebook usually will ditch all of the fonts for a standard device font anyway. But because we got this green pop-up, we know that this book will pass validation at Amazon, And if we did fail validation, the program will tell you which line of code the error is on so you can find it easily. All right, guys. I think we are pretty much done here.